This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana makes car selling fast and easy from start to finish. Enter your license plate or VIN and get a real offer in seconds, down to the penny. If you accept, Carvana will come pick up your car from your driveway. Or you can drop it off at one of our car vending machines. Either way, you get paid instantly. It's fast, transparent, and 100% online. Car selling that saves your time. That's Carvana.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
I'm not usually a huge fan of biopics, but I think this is a really good example of one.
I think Austin's performance is great. I mean, it's interesting if you watch the comparison video between the real Elvis and Austin, and you can see that some of the movements he's actually exaggerated, and some of it is quite accurate, the way he's doing these movements and this particular kind of attitude.
He dies at the end, sorry.
Spoiler alert. Yeah.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast. Today I'm joined by Helen.
Hello.
Luke.
Hello.
And Ash.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about Elvis by Baz Luhrmann. Thank you as always to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes, and thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for editing this podcast and all of our episodes. Please remember to head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts. Do all three, why not? Copy paste the same review, it'll be great. A 5-star review, of course. And join in the conversation with us on social media. We're at Flixwatcher Pod on X or Twitter. Well, no, sorry, I don't know why I call it X. It's always Twitter. And just type in Flixwatcher everywhere else and you'll find us.
Hello, film fans. Welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast. Our guests today are Ash and Luke. Over to you, please, Ash, to say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hi, Ash Farkas. I am a professional lighting camera operator. So a big fan of film, working in sort of commercial, like drama, that sort of stuff. And yeah, very happy to be here.
And yourself, Luke?
Hi, so I'm a musician and podcaster, and I run a podcast called Impropod where I improvise music to stories. So guests come on, tell their stories, and I improvise a soundtrack to them. And I'm also occasional film and TV extra. I was in Casualty the other day. But
Oh, are you based from near Bristol way, are you?
yeah, so I'm based near Bristol. Well, in Bristol,
Okay.
in fact. Yeah.
Is it freaky that I knew that straight away? That you were...
Well, because I think we met at this uni podfest. I may have mentioned it then, so, it didn't freak me out too much.
Casualty was like, when there was so much less TV, then Casualty was like a good staple, half decent thing to watch on a...
What do you mean was? I mean, it probably still is a good staple TV. I don't know. I haven't watched Casualty for at least 20 years.
I wouldn't watch it now because it's a different story each week and it's kind of samey. So since The Wire, since The Sopranos, I tend to go for a long arc and narrative, whereas Casualty is just one episode, procedural. And Charlie's left, hasn't he?
He has, yeah.
That's the reason I don't watch
Charlie's still there, isn't he?
Is he? I thought he left recently. Maybe I've just...
No, I was actually carted around in a wheelchair by Charlie.
Oh, really?
Wow.
So you know better than anyone.
Right? That's my claim to fame.
Yeah. Did we see your incident, or are you just someone who is already in Holby City general?
Just generally around, I think. Yeah, I haven't had no real injuries, but apart from some sunburn.
Fair enough. So you've chosen Elvis. Can you tell us, first of all, why you chose it? And then second of all, I'll give you the 60-second timer in which you can give us the synopsis.
Okay. The reason why I chose it is I'm interested in biopics. I mean, so, I've seen the Dylan one, and I've seen the one about Freddie Mercury and Queen, and this is a part of that kind of genre that interests me. It's also a real kind of, it's a big film, I kind of like films which have a very kind of flashy edge to them, maybe. So the synopsis then.
Hold on 1 second. Timer starts now.
So the film Elvis follows Elvis Presley, and it's told from the perspective of Tom Parker, his manager, who's this weird kind of sleazy character. And the story is really about how Elvis became famous and how he got into this incredible kind of status, and it explores the kind of controversy that his music produced and his rise to fame, basically, and his rise and fall, I'd say.
Is it Cradle? Yeah, it's not Cradle, but we get him very young stage. Ash, Luke said he likes biopics. Where are you in biopics? What do you think of them in general?
I'm not generally a biopic kind of person. I prefer fictional stories overall, like classical kind of like hero's journey stuff. So I'm quite picky with them. I really enjoyed Elvis. I think it's a really good example of what a biopic should be. I've no idea as to the accuracy of it, because I know sometimes they take liberties, sometimes, it's more about the legend than the truth. But in my head, we're not watching a documentary, we're watching a film, so I don't mind that. Yeah, I'm not usually a huge fan of biopics, but I think this is a really good example of one.
I wonder what a Baz Luhrmann documentary might be like. just when you said it down, it's like, I mean, documentaries can be anything really, but it's about the truth and telling the story. So, but I just thought if Baz Luhrmann did a documentary, it probably wouldn't be too far from this, to be honest with you.
Yes.
I reckon the camera would be upside down for quite a lot of the time.
Helen, we've talked about biopics a few times in this here podcast. Remind people who haven't heard your thoughts on them in general as to what you think.
I mean, I love a biopic. I love a music biopic as well. That's probably my favourite. I saw this at the cinema and rewatched it for the podcast. And the first note in my notebook is batshit. It's fair to say it's a pretty batshit interpretation of film storytelling in general. It's interesting because in the time that I watched Elvis, I've seen Priscilla, which is the Sofia Coppola take from a very different angle, and then watch this. So they're both very, very different films and quite different Elvises as well. But yeah, I mean, I like some Elvis songs. I wouldn't really say particularly I'm an Elvis fan, but it's an interesting film for sure.
What made you go to the cinema to watch it if you're not an Elvis fan? Is it the Baz Luhrmann of it or the biopic of it all?
Just the experience of cinema. I just love it. Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'm probably a fan of Baz Luhrmann. I'm not a hater. Moulin Rouge is one of my favourite films, and I don't mind The Great Gatsby.
Luke's not happy with that statement.
But yeah, I think there's a few interesting things in this, particularly that it is told from the Colonel's point of view is quite interesting. But like rewatching it again, it's really interesting because it doesn't actually have any Elvis songs kind of played through the whole entire song. We just kind of get like a 3-minute snippet, and there's some like interesting needle drops. There's a Doja Cat needle drop in it as opposed to Elvis. So in terms of it being a musical, we don't really get to hear much of the music, which when you compare it to A Complete Unknown, which is all of the songs sung all of the way through, it's kind of interesting that he chose not to do that. So yeah, I think having watched it a second time, I'm not sure it's that great a film. I think it's an interesting performance from Austin Butler, especially when you compare that he won the Oscar for this and poor old Timmy left with nothing, which I think Timmy's performance is probably a better one than this. But I do like the fact that apparently Austin Butler had to hire a voice coach to do kind of an exorcism to exorcise the spirit of Elvis from him.
When you raise those things like, you said Austin won but Timmy didn't, it does beg the question who else was up against in that. So I will try and pull that up to refer back to later, who else Austin Butler was up against.
I'll have a look.
Versus Timothée Chalamet. Yeah, Luke and Ash, what are your thoughts on Elvis generally? Because for me, I'm 100% not fussed about everything. And I've listened to his albums, and I've just never really seen it in the way that I've seen and understood why the Rolling Stones were massive when they were, the Beatles were massive when they were, or even the Beach Boys, and going back to B.B. King and all those, I can understand why those guys were so fantastic. But I think the modern lens that we have, where like shaking your hips vigorously is not like, I don't understand why that's a thing that makes the news. Do you know what I mean? What are your thoughts on, so where do you sit on his music and his style? Let's go with you, Luke, first.
Well, I think you have to put yourself in the perspective of what it was like at that time. There's just sort of nothing like that as being an audience member, seeing this guy who's shaking his hips. I mean, it was controversial. I mean, I thought it was quite funny in the film when one of the managers on stage is like, stop the show, this is not on. You don't go and shake your hips. I think, yeah, he's an amazing product. I think Elvis. And his music, I like it. I'm not a massive Elvis fan, I haven't been to the Elvis Impersonator Festival in Wales, of all places.
I mean, the fact you know it's interesting.
Welsh Elvises are quite hilarious. Just go for that, really. But yeah, I think he's all right. You know, he
I think he's all right.
see.
It's kind of interesting. He borders very much kind of support, exploit black music. And I think it's sort of touched on in this, but not really with that much depth.
Yeah. I'd love to know how much of a friend he really was with like B.B. King and those. That's the bit I was like more interested in for me personally than the others. Sorry, carry on. I know I kind of interjected there.
That was it. And also, just to say, I'm sorry, Austin, he didn't win the Oscar. He won the BAFTA and the Academy, but he lost out to Brendan Fraser. So,
for The Whale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the film that no one is really ever going to remember in 30 years' time anyway.
I think Austin's performance was great. I mean, it's interesting if you watch the comparison video between the real Elvis and Austin, and you can see that some of the movements he's actually exaggerated and some of it is quite accurate, the way he's doing these movements and this particular kind of attitude. You know, he studied for quite a long time to do that together. Elvis, kind of very distinctive drawl he's got in the way he talks as well, you know.
I think Austin's well on the way to being an absolute megastar. If this isn't his like big crowning one, then, you know, he had a good stint in June 2, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I think he's got to get a few more notches under his belt to even to get to the same level as Timothée Chalamet, but I think he's got good opportunity. Was it the bike riders, the bicycle things he's in?
Bicycle something?
Yeah, the bike riders.
Tom Hardy is with it?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
So he's well on the way, and I'm always very happy to see Tom Hanks in anything, and it's quite nice to see him play a villainous kind of character.
Yeah, a lot of prosthetics he had to go through, Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Actually. Something like 3 to 5 hours a day of just making him look, you know.
Was that how long it took?
Yeah, apparently. With the kind of greasy hair and the sort of bald look, and then especially for the older scenes where he's looking more kind of dishevelled.
Yeah, and in hospital and stuff like that, yeah. So no one's that big a fan of Elvis. So there's no one there like listening along, watching along and saying that that's nonsense, that's not true, or no one had any kind of opinions on it from a factual point of view.
Well, I wasn't brought up with Elvis. It's a very different story when it's in your family. He's there. So I can't compare the film to his personality as if from childhood, if you see what I mean.
Well, it does gloss over a couple of things, like the whole thing with Priscilla. It never once like mentions how young she was when they met or any of that kind of like origin.
She's portrayed quite old in this, isn't she?
Yes.
I found out after the fact that was she about, how old was she? Like 14?
Yeah, about that age when they kind of met.
Which is insane.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a very kind of groomery relationship that they had, and obviously the version of Priscilla is obviously based on her memoir, but kind of like how Elvis was. He was just very, very strange. It doesn't really go into kind of like the lows very well. It doesn't really go into kind of like his struggles with prescription drugs. And at the end, like it doesn't really show kind of like how he'd physically changed so much, which was a contributing factor to his death as well. So it doesn't really kind of like dig into those kind of meatier elements of kind of like the Elvis story, similar in the way that for me felt that Bohemian Rhapsody presented a very PG-13 representation of Queen. This is very much kind of like Elvis was amazing, he never did anything wrong or creepy. He's just a golden god and he should be worshipped.
I don't know how much the Elvis estate was involved in this at all, so it'd be interesting to see if there were. I think I give a bit more leeway in this compared to Bohemian Rhapsody, first of all, because I don't know any Elvis stuff. I was surprised it didn't go into I'm not surprised as well that they didn't kind of dig into the Priscilla thing. I think it's great that there was that counterpoint film shortly afterwards that kind of unintentionally or intentionally addressed the things that are missing that. But because it's Baz Luhrmann, also I can understand why there's a more fantastical, showier side of things, even though it never really went into like super duper Baz Luhrmann as he can do. And like I say, I want to touch upon Moulin Rouge in a second, Luke, because you seem to be a dissenter.
Somewhat.
But I could understand, because it's Baz Luhrmann, why it lent on the fantastical side, the extravagant side of Elvis. Does that make sense?
Imagine if it was directed by, I don't know, was it the guy who did like sort of British realism, right? Or just if it was a completely different take on it.
Yeah.
Just no showmanship at all. Or in fact, nothing. If it was very straight, what that would have been like as a film. I mean, as to watch it, it's a bit much when you start watching it. He's taken this absolute flamboyancy and the production have put it all into the film. It's like eating butter for some of it. And you think, oh my God, I might throw up at some point, But I think they went for that decision, and I think they treated it well. It's hyper real.
Yeah. So you're not that big a fan of Moulin Rouge, I'm sensing.
I haven't seen it in a while. I think I watched it way too many times with my sister. It was just there.
Oh, okay.
Who's the main character again? Was he played by
Ewan
Scottish
McGregor.
guy? Ewan McGregor. So my sister was a massive Ewan McGregor fan, I think, and she couldn't stop watching it. Maybe it might have been because that was the only VHS we had for a while. I don't know. But
That's just how it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
That's just how it is sometimes.
And yeah, I remember the sort of camera movements and this sort of very extravagant kind of way of filmmaking, which you can see in Elvis as well. Moulin Rouge, I don't know. Are we talking about? Are we going to go into this?
No.
Right.
I thought there might be just like a cast out, or like a clear reason why you didn't like it. You don't have to have one. I was just thought if there was a simple reason.
I know a lot of people who hate it, who really, really hate it, which is fine.
I think a lot of it's just a musical, like people like put off straight away by it's a musical, and also the singing isn't that great.
No, it seems so. And it's about a guy who falls in love with a hooker, if I remember. But isn't it?
It's about finding true love and following your artistic dreams.
It's about spectacular.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else you guys want to say before we head to the scores? For me, this probably goes into the scores a bit, because I know of many of the biopics I've seen, because I knew the least about Elvis. I was Googling along quite a bit through this, and yeah, like Helen said, I think there's a few things which they did gloss over, and I was kind of waiting for the bits to happen. And things like when he joined the army for just a couple of, it didn't seem like it was a big deal. I didn't get how big a deal he was before he joined the army to then come back from it, because it just kind of seemed he was still pottering around doing rinky-dink shows, headlining those or usurping the headliner. But it didn't sound like he was really on the way to superstardom at that point, whereas I thought he was, just in my limited history. I don't know if that came across anyone else. It just kind of seemed to like glaze over some like bits like that, which I thought would have been a bit interesting to dig into.
Yeah, I didn't see him doing any army stuff, really. Did you?
Nah, it seemed more like a setup to just introduce his wife.
Yeah, because she was there in the barracks randomly. And
yeah. I think it is interesting that the narrator for the film is essentially the villain, which might explain some of the glossing over. Maybe it's sort of them telegraphing that they're really focused on Elvis the showman as opposed to like Elvis the real man. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff in it. I was a lot more interested in the first part of the film, where it really showed him sort of like integrating with like black communities, learning a lot of his music from there, which again is like, I think later on in the film they show him with B.B. King sort of saying, this guy's the real rock and roll star. I'm not sure how accurate that is to real life. I'm not sure how much he attributed to people once he got really famous. But I thought the scenes were really powerful, especially it's like the opening bit where it shows him seeing some people playing some blues, and then he goes into the church and they're doing the gospel music, and the film starts mixing those scenes together, mixing the audio. I thought it was quite interesting, because again, I'm not really an Elvis fan, but I thought just from a musical history point of view, that was quite nice.
Yeah, definitely. A key question is, now you've seen a biopic, do you want to see the documentary? And I'm more interested now than I was before. And there's some pieces like when Elvis called out Colonel Tom Parker saying, "You stole all my money," when he's on that stage, I was like, I wonder if there's actual video of that, like him saying that kind of stuff. Because there is video of him like doing his last performance, for example, on YouTube, which I saw. But I'd like to see if there was any point where he shouted them out. And what, Colonel Tom Parker, what, someone said it before, what a manipulative bastard. How did he manage to get this guy who's ostensibly the most famous person in the world to stay just in Vegas? He wouldn't even let him get on a plane because he couldn't get on a plane. So, wow, that's just insanity.
It seems crazy that he could control him that much.
Yeah.
But there's sort of modern day examples of that happening with certain people as well. I think Stanley had quite a similar situation where his sort of handlers basically took over his life at a certain point. Yeah, so it's just crazy to think that there are people who are literally in the limelight, like superstars, but behind the scenes there's someone just sort of like controlling them in some way.
Well, on that note, should we head to the scores?
I'm Sam Clements, host of the 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival, another podcast in the Stripped Media family, a podcast that celebrates movies under 90 minutes long. Each episode, I'm joined by a special guest who selects a movie to join our prestigious lineup. Past guests have included fellow Stripped Media family members Martin and Sam from Song by Song, and Kobe from Flixwatcher, and Dave from The Wire Stripped. Search for us now on the app you're currently listening to this podcast, or join us at 90minfilmfest.com.
So welcome to our Flixwatcher scores. All of the scores are out of 5. You can have decimal places if you would like them. We'll start with you, please, Luke, because you picked it with your recommendability.
Recommendability. I'm going to give it a solid 3. It's fairly recommendable. It's quite a fun watch. It's quite long. I think it's a bit too long. Yeah, so solid 3.
Ash?
I gave it a little bit higher. I went for a 4 just because of sort of how bombastic it is, and I feel like it's the kind of film that I could recommend to everyone, even if I don't think it's necessarily a 5-star film.
Yeah, fair enough. Helen?
Yeah, so I'm also going to be in the 3 camp. I think if you don't like Baz Luhrmann and you're not that big a fan of Elvis, you might find this a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
The Baz Luhrmann thing is quite heavy. His handprints are all over this. And if you're not a fan of that style, I don't think you're probably even going to get through the opening kind of like
it's quite a lot, isn't it,
batshitness of spinning around.
Yeah.
It doesn't start in the beginning. Like there's no logical kind of storytelling.
Well, it's interesting how that really throws people still, that you don't have to necessarily start the thing at the start. It's just people are still complaining about how Pulp Fiction is put together. You're like, really?
Yeah.
But you're right, Helen, it does really put people off, doesn't it?
It does. And yeah, the length is a lot. I think the best thing about it is Austin Bulter. He is really good in this, but I feel as a biopic, it doesn't really give that much away. And I would kind of like a little bit more. For 2 hours and 39 minutes, I'd want to come away with it with a bit more than going, oh, well, he wore a pink suit a lot, because I didn't really get that much kind of new from it, I don't think.
But an Elvis Tarantino movie, now we're talking. I mean, that would be quite something.
Bob Hotep, that wasn't Tarantino, was it? I'm going to go for 3.2.
Sam Raimi.
Oh, no, there was Elvis in
True Romance.
True Romance, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was thinking. So, yeah, 3.2. I didn't watch this in the cinema because again, not asked about Elvis. I was semi-intrigued. Well, I was very intrigued because I do like Baz Luhrmann and his style. So I came in here thinking it's going to be 2.5-ish before pressing play, and I was like, actually, yeah, it's fine. It's a bit longer. Didn't go into where I'd like it to go. Didn't explain things, but I wasn't bored with it. I think that's more Baz Luhrmann. I think it's more Baz Luhrmann, Austin Butler, and Tom Hanks as a trifecta. But then the story itself was like a bit mid. Repeat viewing score, Luke.
Repeat viewing score. I don't really want to watch it again. I've seen it twice. It's a 2.
Why have you seen it twice?
I saw it before.
Okay, you saw it
a while ago, and then I think I saw it in the cinema, and then watched it recently.
Ash?
I think I watched it for the first time for this, and I feel like I have everything I need. So I think it's a 1 for me. I don't think I'm going to pick up anything extra on a repeat viewing.
Helen?
Yeah, I've seen it twice. I'm not going to watch it again. I did debate for a little time not rewatching it because of the length, but then I was like, I probably should watch it again. Why not? But I don't think you need to. So I'll give it a 3.
Okay, well, when you said you're not going to watch it again, but you're giving it a 3, that's interesting. I'm not going to watch this again. I'm going to go for a 1. Small screen score, Luke.
Yeah, I think it translated fairly well, but it was probably wasn't hooked as much, you know? There's a lot of stuff in there which feels like it's made for a big screen. I mean, partly those wide shots of that particular time, Memphis in the 50s, they managed to recreate that, and the costumes and the hair and all that stuff. The attention to detail is phenomenal. So yes, small screen score, I'd give it a 2.
Say that again, so I just want to make sure I interpreted the small screen score right there for you. So it's a high small screen score if you think it works well in at home, but you're giving it 2 because you think it's better in the cinema?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Ash?
Yeah, I watched it on a desktop computer, and there's definitely some shots where I could tell there's, a lot of spectacle. It'd be nice on the big screen, but I didn't feel like I was missing anything out, so I'd give it a 3.
Helen?
Yeah, I was definitely more critical watching it at home than I was in the cinema. I think with it being on the big screen, it's a lot easier to kind of get caught up in the kind of madness and the spectacle of it all. So, I mean, ideally, if you can see it on a big screen first, then that will probably be a wild experience. But I don't know whether it loses too much with the transferring to the small screen other than my attention, really. So I'll give it like a 4.
A 4? I'm going 3.5 here. 3.65, I'm going to say.
3.6? That's so specific.
No, honestly, that's not nowhere near the most specific score I've given or anyone else has given. But I think this is, Baz Luhrmann looks amazing in the cinema, and I think this would benefit from that. So, yeah, 3.65. Engagement score, Luke?
Engagement score, I'll give it a 4. I think it was pretty engaging.
Ash?
I feel like the first act was really strong, but I think as we got into like the third act in Vegas and the length of the film really started hitting me, I kind of started waning, so I'd give it a 2.
Helen?
Yeah, definitely this rewatch at home has kind of exploited the sort of lack of like detail and kind of progression in the story and everything like that. And I kind of did end up a lot of Wikipediaing just to kind of check where exactly we were in the old Elvis timeline, and then I got kind of sucked into reading letterbox reviews because sometimes that does happen. So I can only give it a 3 for engagement.
This was your second time viewing, so you knew where it was going.
Yeah. He dies at the end, sorry.
Spoiler alert. Yeah.
But not,
I was wondering how graphic they were going to go
but
with
not
that.
like
with the death.
as the Elvis legend kind of goes, like on the toilet eating a hamburger. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, they didn't push that.
Yeah,
did
I
they?
was curious.
No.
Yeah, they didn't even say it at all.
No.
They did show the shooting the TVs part, which is something I knew.
So was it, Helen, 2?
3. Would have been more if he'd have been dead pooping on the toilet with a hamburger.
I'm going 2.3. I was Googling away with this when I don't normally do that. So it just kind of shows what kind of head state I was in. And also, I didn't really care for the music that much, so I maybe had a bit of a snooze. I didn't have a snooze. I just closed my eyes when that was happening.
It was interesting. At one point, they sort of remixed some of his tunes, and at one point they had the Britney Spears soundtrack with Elvis on the top. I was like, what is going on here?
They were doing some wild stuff, weren't they?
Yeah, it's particularly within the film sequence, the sequence about these films that he made. It's kind of.
I quite enjoyed some of those, like on remixes and needle drops. I wonder if that was just sort of like to replicate the shock of mixing genres back then.
Probably. Likely. That gives us an overall score of 2.75938.
That's awful.
Repeat viewing score is where it lost the most points. Yeah. Otherwise, it's kind of respectable. Yeah, we're just not going to watch it again, basically.
Poor old Elvis.
Yeah, it's a oneer. It's a oneer or a twoer if you've got a podcast and someone's nominated it for you. Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Luke, Ash, can you tell everyone where we can find you online? And we'll say goodbye to the listeners.
So you can find me at impropod.com and on Instagram at impropod. And that's my podcast where I improvise music to stories.
Awesome. Ash?
I only have an Instagram where you can catch me at Ash_Farkas, Farkas, where I sometimes put up some work and photography.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure chatting about Elvis and chatting to you guys as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
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 Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes and Rockwood Audio's editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.